PSR, that wonderful three-letter abbreviation we're getting very used to this season, and point deductions that might be potentially a thing of the past, Dave. Looking at Mike Keegan's exclusive in the Mail, top-flight clubs consider luxury tax to replace points deductions. So instead of being deducted 4.6 points like Everton and Nottingham Forest this season, it could be that if you overspend, you just get a financial penalty. What do you make of it, Dave?
It doesn't surprise me because, I mean, this league, markets itself worldwide on being the most competitive league in the world, most exciting and most competitive, and the PSR measures. I can see both sides of the argument, but the PSR measurements are anti-competition, I should say. That they, Nottingham Forest come up and they spent they bought a ridiculous amount of players, but they certainly showed ambition. And Forest stayed up last year. They're probably going to stay up again this season. Clubs like Sheffield United and Burnley spent a bit of money, but say Luton, not spent anywhere near as much, and they're probably going to end up going straight back down again. That's not good for the competition, the competitive nature of the Premier League. I think it's been brought in to stop a Newcastle or somebody like spending massively, but the flip side is you then get this absolute. We're talking about one kind of chaos in Chelsea, Man United. That's the sort of chaos football fans love. What they don't love is looking at a league table and not knowing what on earth is going on because another team's had a certain amount of points deducted. Everton have 10 points deducted, then they get 4 back. Then Forest get done 4 points, and now Everton could get done again. No one knows, where the relegation line is. I went to saw Rob Edwards a few weeks ago, and he was saying I work off a different league table to the actual league table, the Luton manager. Because I'm assuming they're all going to get their points back again. It's become too complicated. And the average football fan doesn't want to be able to do all these different equations to try and work out who may have which points deducted. People over the world are glued to this, but on Survival Sundays, you guys will probably bill it on Sky. Luton might end up staying up, only to end up going down 4 days later because the lawyers will intervene and Forest could end up staying up.
Yeah,
it's just not good for the competition. It's not good for the marketing of the competition, whatever the rights or wrongs of people overspending is.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised this is going to happen.
And we haven't even mentioned Leicester in all of that, who are also in this conversation. And we don't want asterisks by teams. That's not the ideal way to go about things. But I guess, Riath, if you did have this luxury tax, so a financial sanction rather than a sporting sanction of a points deduction, wouldn't that just give those richer clubs a chance to kind of dominate even more? Because they'll say, hey, I'll take the financial hit, I want to spend more.
That intuitively, that's my concern looking at this, because if you're Newcastle United, where the sort of Saudi sovereign wealth fund behind you, a financial penalty isn't a penalty. So we can all look at this situation and say, well, hang on a second, does there need to be some kind of meaningful way of restraint? And points does achieve that. I don't think there's a good answer to this problem, because clearly the PSR rules, the way they're being implemented at the moment, I don't believe that's necessarily in line with what the intention of the rule was created for. And so therefore, it's not fit for purpose. I think kind of going to the story as it appears there. There's some excellent point from Mike Keegan in there. And one of the details that really caught me as well is he's saying that 17 out of the 20 clubs would be in favour of pushing through a reform. Whether that becomes a luxury tax or something else, I think is probably unclear at the moment. But that they need 14 for the majority when they vote on this, whenever that would be in June. So it's an interesting situation. The clubs as a whole are pushing for this. So clearly they feel that the existing framework isn't appropriate. But I do have reservations about something that effectively tells those absolute wealthiest clubs, so Newcastle, Manchester City being the two obvious ones, here you go, you will be able to spend your way out of a problem you put yourselves in. I'm not convinced by that.
Yeah, and it seems like, well, according to the Mirror's article on this, that the Premier League are in opposition to what the clubs want. Clubs in revolt says, I want new luxury tax system to let them spend what they want, but Premier League bosses are standing firm. So you sense that this one is probably going to rumble on a bit. But what about this in the context of the new football regulator, Dave? I mean, I suppose it makes the need for one and the role that they play even more critical.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very complex argument about the independent regulator because it has been a Wild West for so long financially, football. You can see why government, why fans, why lots of people will want an independent regulator. I'm very sceptical about whether it would actually work, whether it would actually make things any less controversial than they are at the moment. I think there's arguments over. We're talking about Newcastle and the Saudis. Whether they should have been allowed to buy that club in the first place is a very different argument, and I don't think they should have for human rights reasons, etc. But now they have been able to buy the club. It seems absurd that these extremely wealthy people are having to think about trying to flog Kieran Trippier in January to fund some. It just seems very strange. I'd rather they weren't allowed to have bought it in the first place, but I don't understand where we're going with it. Independent regulator, if it comes in, I don't think it will last long, and I don't think it will be a success. And we could talk about that for hours, and I won't bore you anymore with it.